So second sermon is Matthew 5, 6, and 7 is the first one. Second one is in Matthew 10. Good. And it is a sermon on Jesus tied relationships to transformation. In the previous session, I tried to make the point that Jesus focused on character, commitment, and choices in presenting his prerequisites for discipleship. That's what he was doing. He was saying, you want to be my disciple? Here's your character, here's your commitment, here's your choices. That's what we did in the last hour. As he moves it forward, the truth is that there's more than knowing the goal that's important. There's a second factor that's critical to the transformation of a disciple. If you're going to make a disciple, they have to know what character they have to live, what commitment they have to make, and what choices they have to make. But there's a second factor that's critical, and that is relationship. Jesus didn't send a video. He came down and he worked with people. You cannot do discipleship by digital material. Now, I'm doing that while I'm taping. But here's the point. This isn't discipleship. This part of it is only the cognitive transformation. There's another part to it. You need David, and you need Kirsten, and you need Kelly, and you need Peter. You need people in your life that model what is going on, because I can't. I'm running at a pace that we just don't see each other than class. You don't come by anymore like you used to. No, so what I'm saying is discipleship is life on life. Discipleship is life on life. So here's the thing. 1 Corinthians 11:1 says, be followers of me as I am of Christ. Paul didn't just say, listen, I sent the letter. You don't need me. You got the letter. He said, follow me like I follow Christ. The fact is that students do follow us. You have youth group kids that will follow you. I hope by now you know that I'm telling you the truth. The coolest thing ever for a 15-year-old girl is for an 18-year-old girl to befriend her. The coolest thing ever for a 15-year-old guy is to have an 18 or 19-year-old guy take time and go get a burger. It's not that they can't get a burger. It's that the cool factor went up dramatically in their life because you're in the car with them. So here's the thing. I know, it sounds funny because you look at you and you go, really? But here's the thing. You were like that at 15 too. Our habits do rub off on people. And our acceptance and our love and our affirmations do matter. Now, the truth is most of you know that, but when truth really transforms, it shows in relationships first. The reason that teens and youth groups pick on relationships is because they're looking for change in life. When truth transforms, it shows up in relationships first. That's why when the Spirit of God is reigning in your heart, wives will be subject to their husbands, husbands will love their wives, masters will be good to those that serve them, servants will be good to their masters. People will get along when truth is transforming them. So when you come into this, you have to understand, most people grow up with dysfunctional models. They really did. Some people have been digitally abused by the time you get into their life. Most of our students have been awash in poor models from the media. So when I get down to chapter 10, I want you to see in chapter 10, Jesus is going to send out guys, but he's not just telling them what to do. He's showing them with his life, and he's asking them to show with their lives as people follow them. It's life on life. Okay? Go to chapter 10, verse 1. Jesus summoned his 12 disciples, gave them authority over unclean spirits to cast them out and to heal every kind of disease and every kind of sickness. One of the things you have to know is that until you have God's call on your life, you can't give away what you don't possess. So what Jesus did was he gave them the ability and he gave them the message, because the message that you have is determined by Jesus. The power you have is determined by Jesus. You don't choose Jesus. He chose you that you would go and bear fruit, and that's what he said. So it says this. They were given the ability to go heal every kind of disease. I'm not promising that they had that ability the day before or the day after, but that day they had it. If God calls you to do something, he'll give you a power to do it. He'll give you the ability that is requisite for you to do it. Now, At the same time, in verse 2, it says, these are the names of the 12 apostles, and it names them. In other words, you are not a number to God. He knows your name. He knows who you are, where you came from, what you're about, and what He has asked you to do is in keeping with who you are. And by the way, we saw this early on. With Moses, we saw this. God's call in your life is normally shaped after your burden. So what was Moses' big problem? What's the chip on Moses' shoulder? He's a justice guy. He hates injustice. He sees a guy beating a slave. He steps in and he kills the guy. Now, that's not exactly justice. It's justice run amok. But then God says, you know how you're always worried about how, like, the slaves get mistreated? Well, I'm going to go send you to, get all the slaves out. Why? Because He made him and He knows who He's calling to do what. In other words, if you hate the jungle and you don't like bugs, chances are very good God is not calling you with a pith helmet and shorts to send you to Bula Bula land, okay? You don't have to worry about God sending you to the opposite place of where you want to be. I'm not saying He won't ever test you or stretch you. I'm saying that the kind of ministry He has for you is probably in keeping with the kind of burden you have. It starts with a burden. I'm a teacher. This is all I know how to do. Seriously, as a mechanic, I fall very far short. I can take it apart and put it back together, but I don't know how it works. And I think what you want to do is you want to identify at this point in your life, in the next couple of years, be identifying what moves your heart. You want to know God's call in your life? What moves your heart? And I mean, Abby has this thing. Every person in her life that doesn't know Jesus or doesn't seem to want to just puts a wound on her. You all know that about her? She's like wounded for the lost. Anybody see a missionary coming out of that? Okay, the thing is, and I'm not saying like I'm not sending you to any countries. I don't know what God wants. I'm telling you that you're burdened. Like first day of class, you're like worried about whether or not your friends are all understanding this. Okay, that's fine. Your burden is going to go with your heart. Don't expect God to drop you into the opposite of everything that you are. Now, for some of you, God's call in your life will be incredibly, incredibly easy to pick out. The love of your life will ask you to marry him. Guess what? God's call in your life is to marry them. Then you'll have a child, and God's call in your life is to be a godly parent. How do I know? Because you have a baby coming. You don't have to go, I wonder if God wants me to be a godly parent. Hello, in the womb. Okay? So what I'm asking you to do is just understand, not everything is big and mystical. Some things are just, well, duh. Okay? If you go to college and you go off to a university, then put yourself into it and give it your best. Or don't do it. Either throw yourself at it or don't do it. Whatever your hand finds to do, do it with all your might. Or stay home. Play hard. Or stay home. Now, Jesus knows by name each of these guys. He knows their backgrounds. He knows who they are. And not all of them pass the course. Look at the end of verse 4. By the way, he also called a guy by the name of Judas Iscariot, who later betrayed him. So from the beginning, God already, listen, your failure in ministry is not God's fault. His call wasn't insufficient. Your obedience was. Verse 5. Then these 12, Jesus sent out after instructing them. Now, look at the instructions and see if you can identify the principles behind the instructions. First of all, do not go in the way of the Gentiles and do not enter any city of the Samaritans. Here's the principle. God sets the parameters of your ministry. He's the one who tells you where to go and where not to. It's not up to you, it's up to him. If he tells you don't go there, it doesn't matter if it's popular to go there. If all the major journals say that's how you have to start your church, don't do it if that's not what God told you to do. I just don't know any other way to say it. God sets the fences. Second thing I know, rather go to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. God plants the burden for who it is you are to reach. Can I just say, you're going to reach people who are probably like you. I mean, I don't know if you know this, but like the African American community is probably not all going to come to Jesus because of me. Why? Because I don't look like them. And my culture isn't what they are. And even though I grew up in a mixed race family with half of my brothers and sisters being black, here's the bottom line. They're different than I am. Their basic culture and way of doing things is different than the way I do it. This is not like politically incorrect and This is not a judgment about it. It's just, that's the way it is. You're probably going to reach people that are like you. If you're middle class, you could probably, go slum it and reach like people in the worst part of the world. But chances are good you're not going to be comfortable and you're going to look stupid. Why? Because you don't know how to be hungry. Okay? You don't really know how to live the way they live. Now, there are guys like Hudson Taylor who could pull it off. He could go somewhere and he could put on their garb and learn their language and really do it well. That's exceptional. But normally it's not like that. He says, now, as you go, preach, saying the kingdom of heaven is at hand. Here's the rule. Your message is framed by what God says. You don't pick your message. Jesus gives you your message. It's not your job to make Jesus more popular. This is not Christian American Idol, okay? You're not out there to somehow like get more likes for Jesus' Facebook page. You are there to represent a message he gave you, and if it's unpopular, then so be it. That's just what it is. You get the message from him. And then he says, here's your message. The kingdom of heaven is at hand. While you're going, heal the sick, raise the dead, cleanse the lepers, cast out demons. Now, what's the principle? You got to meet needs and you got to touch people. You got to touch people. Ministry's about touching people. It's not good enough to just transmit all kinds of head information. You got to touch people. The thing that excites me about you guys is you're not afraid to do it. Okay, some of you are a little bit afraid to do it, but most of you aren't really that afraid to do it. You'll get out there and you'll get involved in people's lives. Walk into the room. I don't care if it's this room or the youth group room down there or the prayer meeting room down there or the nursery over there. When you walk into the room, pick out the people nobody's talking to. Find them. Lock on and walk up and say, hey, glad you're here today. If you throw yourself out there to touch people's lives, people will respond. We want them to come in here and respond to Jesus without us responding to them, and that's just not going to work. Do not acquire gold or silver or copper for your money belts, or a bag for your journey, or even 2 coats or sandals or a staff, for the worker is worthy of his support. What's he saying? It's not only rely on the provision of God, although that's a big portion of it. The last part is definitely that. What's the first part? Not make wealth for yourself? Yeah, don't cash in on ministry. You're not there to try and make a pile of money. I'm frustrated with this, guys, because my generation turned everything into how much they could make in Jesus' name. The selling of Jesus. It's one of the most important things. I work in Israel where a bunch of unsaved people sell programs of Jesus all the time. It's like the selling of Jesus. We will teach you Jesus. You don't even know Jesus. How in the world are you going to teach people about Jesus? It's frustrating to me that everything comes with, and I made this much. It's really okay to give it away. I don't know if I could say it that way, but it's really okay to give it away. Here's the thing. Give it away and God will give it to you. Or make it into a business, and it'll go exactly that far and die when you do. If you want it to be powerful, give it away. It'll drive them nuts. Seriously, it drives people nuts. Giving it away. Why aren't you charging me for it? Because I really care about you. Yeah, but why else? That's not even something you can do, right? And then obviously you trust God's provision. Now verse 11, whatever city or village you enter, inquire who is worthy in it, and stay at this house until you leave that city. Do not misread this, because it's a very awkward translation. Like, we're not worthy. That's not what he's saying. What he's saying is, when you plan ministry, look for people who are spiritually sensitive. Look for somebody who has a spiritual sensitivity and plant your ministry there. Don't float around from one place to another. Commit yourself to people who have a spiritual inquiry or a spiritual sincerity about what they're doing. Look for a spiritually sensitive person. I took it from Ed Lewis. This is our spiritually sensitive person. This is our symbol for spiritually sensitive. You find the person who's spiritually sensitive. When I was out teaching in Philly, we were out in Center City, Philly, and when you were talking to a crowd and you found somebody who was, you do this, and everybody else in the group knew, that guy right there, he's spiritually sensitive. So as soon as I'm done talking to him, somebody else pick him up. It's absolutely done with intent. You don't reach people haphazardly. You reach them intentionally. And so ultimately, he says, when you find somebody who's like that, stay there. And you go and you look for somebody, you inquire about them, you find out that they're serious people. Don't listen, hooking your life to the wrong person is devastating to the ministry. You go into that town, and it's the first person that you go to stay with, and they have the worst reputation in town, and your ministry just got their reputation. So please be aware of where you're going, who you're spending the time with. Verse 12. As you enter that house, give it your greeting, and if the house is worthy, give it a blessing of peace. But if it's not worthy, take back your blessing of peace. What is he saying? Learn to discern if this is the place where ministry should be planted, or whether or not you should run, not walk to the nearest exit. There are times and places you're going to get involved with people, and then you're going to realize, hey, you know what? I thought they wanted Jesus, and what they really want is a date with me. You're laughing. I'm telling you, you're all going to experience this. You're going to come, and you're going to bring them Jesus, and they're going to be thinking, And, it used to be safer. Honestly, in my day, it was safer, because at least you knew they were the opposite sex. You no longer even have that. So you don't know who's interested in talking to you for what reasons. So you're going to start off, and you got to be ready to go, okay, this isn't going in the right direction. I'm not reading this one. You understand what I'm saying? And then you start backing out. It says, whoever does not receive you, nor heed your words, as you go out of the house or that city, shake the dust off your feet. What's he saying? Don't let rejection stick to you. They're not rejecting you. They're rejecting the God you're bringing to them. Shake it off. Shake it off. Here's the thing. One of the problems we have is that people walk around with that Samuel complex. Oh, they're rejecting me. And God says, they're not rejecting you, Sam. They're rejecting me. You're on the wrong page. You're making ministry about you. You're not the story. Jesus is. So get off the story. And then it says, truly I say to you, it will be more tolerable for the land of Sodom and Gomorrah in the day of judgment than for that city. You know what that verse is? Do you know what verse 15 says? Don't walk out of there angry at them. Recognize that a very terrible thing is going to happen. Be broken for people who refuse Christ. Don't walk around going, well, good. You're just going to burn in hell. The Westboro Baptists bring them to Jesus by arguing with them at funerals, because that's really going to win people to Jesus. That stuff hurts the testimony of Jesus Christ unbelievably. It makes us all look like idiots. And honestly, I want to go. The more you look at Jesus, the less you'll be enraged at the lost world, and the more you'll be broken by their lostness. That's what you need to focus on. So he's not going, it's going to be more tolerable in Sodom and Gomorrah than for you. And he's not like saying spit as you go out the door. He's saying, walk away, shake it off. Please know how sad this is for them. When Jesus looked at the city of Jerusalem, he cried. He said, you're rejecting me, but look at what you're going to go through. I don't want you to go through this. There's something wrong with any Christian that wants someone to be in hell. Something wrong in your heart. Let me go on and say, behold, I send you out as a sheep in the midst of wolves, so be shrewd as serpents and innocent as doves. Let me just stop here for a second and say, you have to be very wise, but you don't have to be wise in worldly things. It's okay if everyone's in the room is laughing and you don't know what's funny. You know what? Nobody prizes innocence anymore. I don't want you to go on the YouTube and find every defiled thing out there so you can be relevant. Be a little irrelevant and innocent, okay? You don't need to know every trashy thing being said by every trashy person in order to be relevant. God will lead, and God will bring you into people's lives and make an impact even if you don't even know what stupid thing they were actually saying. Don't waste your life trying to keep up with the latest trash. There's a lot of ministries. I'm telling you, there's a lot of guys selling this idea that you got to be so relevant. They're wasting their time. Here's the thing. When the FBI wants to train you as to how to deal with counterfeit money, they don't show you a single counterfeit bill. They show you real ones, and you study them so you know what they look like. Then when a counterfeit comes, it doesn't look like the real one. Don't spend your time trying to figure out every wrong thing people believe and how to answer it. Just know what it is that's right. When you know God's Word, when you can walk in God's Word, when you can act in confidence in God's Word, here's what you're going to have. You're going to have a settled heart. And some of you pull it off really well, and I appreciate that about you. I guess one of the things I see is beware of men. They'll hand you over to the courts and scourge you in their synagogues. You'll be brought before governors and kings for my sake and for the testimony to them and to the Gentiles. Can I ask you to do something? The principle that Jesus leaves his guys with is don't be surprised when people hate you because they hate him. Don't be surprised. Don't walk around like, that's just wrong. We have this Christian attitude in America that Americans should be Christian or happy about Christians or positive toward Christians, and how dare they not be? Listen, we lost that fight. I'm telling you, we lost that fight. We turned our school systems over to pagans, and we now have generations of pagans. They're not William Bradford anymore. They're not waiting on the mighty God to bring the gospel to the red man. They hate God, and they're going to come after you. And you need to stand with confidence and understand we don't have to win, because in the end, Jesus does. So stop acting like we have to get everybody to agree with us and somehow agree to our moral codes. They're not gonna. They never did. Honestly, it's not like people invented sin in your generation. They sinned plenty in mine too, and in the one before mine. It's a myth. Every generation just has different ways of showing it. Yours is more brash. You just put your sin out front and then say, you need to accept my sin as not sin. That's the difference. The difference is not that my generation sinned less, it's that we felt bad about it and hid it. Pornography was something you did in hiding. Now it's something you talk about openly with your friend. And they make jokes about it on television shows. It's just more brash. It's not more prevalent, it's more brash. Maybe it's more prevalent too. When they hand you over, do not worry about how or what you are to say, for it will be given to you in that hour what you are to say. This is going to sound like a weird principle. You ready? You can't prepare for everything. Some things you're just going to have to trust God to give you when you need them. You can't prepare for everything. By the way, the thing that's going to get you is the thing you didn't prepare for. After you prepare for everything else, it's going to be the one thing you didn't remember in your toolbox you're going to need stuck on the road. Okay? So here's what you do. Your preparation is to prepare your heart to rely on God, not to prepare your head to have every answer. Because you can't. Honestly, I think I feel more stupid every year. I think I was smarter like some years back than I am now. Because I think the longer you go, the more you realize there's whole worlds of things I know nothing about. I love to learn, you know, I really do, but you're not going to get it all. So you need to step back and go, you know what? If I have Christ, he's the prize. And when they throw me in jail, then they throw me in jail, and I have Christ. He's the prize. And at the end of it, I leave this body, and then I stand in front of Christ, and he's the prize. That's the point. There isn't another point in life. The point is not to be popular. The point is to be faithful. And so Jesus, he sort of lays it. He says, brother's going to betray brother to death, his father, a father his child. Children will rise up against parents and cause them to be put to death. You'll be hated by all because of my name, but it is the one who has endured to the end who shall be saved. I believe that he's talking specifically in the context of Jewish disciples, and I think he's talking in the context of a tribulation period. I believe I can match that up when I get to Matthew 24 and make that point. But here's what you need to know. There will be a breakdown in society as we head to the end. That in the last, I've read all the rest of the books, and at the end, there's a breakdown. The normal bond between parents and children is fraying. Why? Because we can't even determine what a marriage is. How are we going to determine who's a parent? When 5 of you were all married together, which one's the parent? The normal bonds that are there are breaking down. You're seeing the results of it, and social services are going through the roof. Expect that to happen, and as it happens, expect it to happen in your family. Families that used to have 100% of those young people that were coming to know Jesus and serving Jesus, in the next generation have 50%, and the next generation have 15%. It's not because somehow the gospel is deficient, it's because the society's breaking down. Verse 23, whenever they persecute you in one city, flee to the next. Don't be afraid to run. Some Christians think everything is a line in the sand and you have to die on that hill. There are some hills not worth dying on, so run. Okay? Flee. Flee to the next one. Truly I say to you, you will not finish going through the cities of Israel until the Son of Man comes. This is one of the reasons I believe he's talking in the context of Jews, because he says in the cities of Israel. My point is, don't draw a line around everything and die on every hill. Just don't. There are some people that, honestly, they will die for infralapsarianism or supralapsarianism. And if you don't even know what it is, you're a happy person. Let's move on in life. Honestly, everybody, you don't have to get down to, we get some people that are just so incredibly specific about every aspect of salvation that anything that doesn't match it just absolutely blows them out of the water. All right, the bottom line is expect opposition. Expect opposition and know that it's going to come. Now, when that's happening, I need you to look at in verse 24. I need you to see what Jesus says about it. A disciple is not above his teacher, nor a slave above his master. It is enough for the disciple that he become like his teacher, and the slave like his master. What is he saying? Who's the slave and who's the master there? Seriously? Jesus is talking about becoming his disciple. Who's the master? Who's the slave? What did they do to our master? What do you expect to happen to you? Don't go into Christianity so you can have a happy and meaningful life. Go into Christianity so that you can have the only life that's real, the one that's surrendered to Jesus. Because all the rest of them are nonsense. And the bottom line is they didn't like him, and they're not going to like you. If the head of the house, if they called the head of the house Beelzebub, do you see Beelzebub? Baal Zevuv. That's Hebrew. Baal is like the master, the husband, or the head, or Baal. Okay? Zevuv is the word for flies. Zvuv. It's an onomatopoeia. Zvuv. That's what they sound like to Hebrews. I don't know. Anyway, Baal Zevuv. So if they called me Lord of the Flies, what do you think they're going to call you? The point is, they're going to malign the members of the household because you belong to my house. So expect it. Therefore, do not fear them. You know what? Maybe you should underline that one. Don't fear them. Don't fear them. There is nothing concealed that will not be revealed or hidden that will not be known. Nobody's going to get away with tricking you, slamming you, and getting away with it. At the end, everyone will be judged for what they do. Don't think, that's just not fair, they're getting away with it. Yeah, today, but today isn't the last day. What I tell you in darkness, speak in the light. And what you hear whispered in your ear, proclaim upon the housetops. What's he saying? In the quietness of your heart, I'm going to give you a message. Don't be quiet about the message. Turn around and give it. Don't be afraid. Say it. There's a time when you're going to need to. Guys, I just came back from the Middle East. We have relatives in Jesus that are losing their heads. You know what they're doing? Do you know what the Egyptian Christians did before they killed them? They sang. Do you know that I don't think I could sing if somebody was holding a knife to my throat? That's what they did. Gutsy. I'm not telling you that, they're going to get us. I'm saying they're trying. And you don't have any guarantees. So what you have to do is not be afraid, but say what God told you to say. He says it again in verse 28, do not fear those who kill the body, but are unable to kill the soul. But rather, fear him who is able to destroy both soul and body in hell. Who is that? God. It's not Satan. Make sure you got that right. The enemy cannot destroy your soul. God alone is the author of life and death. Are two sparrows sold for a cent? Yet not one of them will fall to the ground apart from your Father, for the very hairs of your head are all numbered. For some of you, it's an easy number, okay? But for others, it's a lot more. Here's the bottom line. He's not talking about counting hairs. He's saying, I know you intimately. I know more about you than you know about you. You don't know how many hairs are on your head, but I do. Stop worrying like I've lost track of you. I haven't. Persecution's going to come. Trouble's going to come. Don't think that I don't see and I don't know. Remember what joy is? What is joy, class? The resolute assurance that God has neither lost interest nor the power to deal with my problem. Joy is not happiness. It's the resolute assurance that God has not lost interest in me, nor has he lost the power to deal with my problem. If it's in my life, it's because God said it should be. You know, he says, verse 32, therefore, everyone who confesses me before men, I will also confess him before my Father who is in heaven. You know what he says? He says, be bold about your testimony, because it's going to pay off. There's a day in which you're going to stand in the courts of heaven, and I'm going to say about you what you said about me. You're going to say you belong to me, and I'm going to say you belong to me. That's going to be a great day. But whoever denies me before men, I will also deny him before my Father who's in heaven. You know why? Do you know why? Because you have the power to reject Jesus. You have the power. Because there's one thing. Jesus paid everything necessary for your justification with everything necessary but one thing. Your acceptance of it. That's it. And you can accept or you can reject. And if you reject, he will reject you, but it is because you rejected him. God isn't trying to get rid of you. It's you didn't want him. So he will let you have eternity without him because that's what you wanted. You want me out of your life? I'll be out. So he ends it this way. Do not think that I came to bring peace to the earth. I did not come to bring peace, but a sword. I sat with a young person the other day who has proclaimed a Christian gay lifestyle and has made clear to their parents that their parents are being intolerant. And I read these verses. I said, tell me what you think these verses mean. When Jesus said, do not think that I came to bring peace on the earth, but I did not come to bring peace, but a sword. I came to set a man against his father, a daughter against her mother, a daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law. A man's enemies will be the members of their household. If you believe that your parents have to bend to your standard and deny Jesus' word to do so, do you understand that you don't know Jesus at all? The fact is, Jesus said, he who loves his father or mother more than me is not worthy of me. He who loves his son or his daughter more than me is not worthy of me. What do you want your parents to do? What would you like them to do? Would you like them to look at you and say, I love you so much, I'm willing to throw away what I know my faith is? Because then they're not worthy of Jesus. So you put them in an awful position. I have no problem with you deciding to reject what Jesus said. I have a problem with you trying to make Jesus say what you want him to say, because he's not going to say it. Truth is stubborn. It doesn't bend. What's interesting is it says, he does not take his cross and follow me is not worthy of me. He who has found his life will lose it, and he who has lost his life for my sake will find it. He said, look, what I'm looking for is only one thing. You give me your life because I gave mine for you. I want an exchange. And if you'll give me your life, I promise you, I will give you more than you could have ever imagined. Guys, I have to close this off. But as you come to the end of this sermon, you got to understand something about God. I wish I could share with you a window of the last 3 weeks of my life. I wish you could see how cool it is to just let God take you where he wants to take you. You'll be in the coolest places ever, doing fun stuff you can't believe. You will be trying to pinch yourself going, am I really having this much fun? I know. Every movie makes it look like the people who reject God are having all the fun. It's a lie. It's a lie. I don't know another way to say it. You're going to be in better places, doing better things, having a better time doing it, and knowing that, you know what, if today's the last day, I've had a great ride. Be bold about walking with Jesus Christ. Do not look at your life like you have to give up so much. Because I got to tell you something. Neither in this life nor in the life to come are you giving up much. Anything you give up, God will pay back. Spend years in some jungle place because God put you there. I promise you, not only will you have more laughs than you can believe. I mean, monkeys are pretty funny. But also, in the life to come, you will not miss a single birthday party of somebody back home that God won't repay you when you get to be with him. You got to know that. You got to know God pays his bills. He does. And he's not going to leave you stuck. So Jesus looks at them and he says, okay, I'm sending you out. Guys, here's the rules. Here are the principles. Here's what I want you to do. And off they go. And what's interesting is they come back and the whole thing falls apart.